Hello, all you beautiful people out there, and welcome to my channel for Saturday live stream. You're gonna have to put up with my avatar. Uh, my face is pretty swollen because I still have uh, sinus trouble right now. So anyway, so first of all, welcome Satan's Little Helper and Nevermore. Uh, and second of all, we've got comment of the week. This comment of the week comes from Creationist Thinks Flintstones was a documentary. That's a John Pendleton rebuttal. And it is from Command Cyborg. Thank you, Command Cyborg. Yeah, like Australia didn't have Crocs. Not sure what that's in relation to, but anyway. Um, and quote unquote, they restricted public access to insert monument site here. It must be a conspiracy. This is in relate. Uh, yeah, sorry. This is in relation to um, John's thing about, well, they're not letting you into Bernafal Cave because they don't want you knowing that man lived with dinosaurs and all that crap. Um, but yeah, um, if you haven't seen my answer to that, why Bernafal Cave is off limits to everyone but the professionals, uh, go watch that. I'm not gonna. Hey, Marianne. Not gonna go through all that again. Um, but yeah, it has nothing to do with a conspiracy of the scientific community. Come on, get with the program, people. Alrighty, and now on with the main event, making fun of the Bible. We are in 1 Kings 10. When the Queen of Sheba heard about the fame of Solomon and his relationship to the Lord, she came to test Solomon with hard questions. So I've got a question. Um, how is the Queen of Sheba, who is a pagan, familiar with the God of Israel? Just wondering, because that seems a bit odd. Anyway, moving on, verse 2. Arriving at Jerusalem with a very great caravan, of course, because, she's a queen and she's got to flaunt her wealth, with camels carrying spices, large quantities of gold, and precious stones, she came to Solomon and talked with him about all that she had on her mind. Solomon answered all her questions. Nothing was too hard for the king to explain to her. When the queen of Sheba saw all the wisdom of Solomon and the palace he had built, the food on his table, the seating of his officials, the attending servants in their robes, his cupbearers, and the burnt offerings he made at the temple of the Lord, she was overwhelmed. Okay, there's an obvious missing thing in that list, which is she didn't seem to be impressed with the quote unquote temple of the Lord. Uh, am I the only one getting weird vibes here? Moving on. Uh, verse 6. She said to the king, "The report I heard in my own country about your achievements and your wisdom is true. But I did not believe these things until I came and saw with my own eyes. Indeed, not even half was told to me. In wisdom and wealth, you have far exceeded the report I heard." Why would she hear anything? I mean, that doesn't really make any sense to me. I mean, she's African. She's she's from Africa, and Solomon's in the Middle East. Now, granted, they're very close to each other. I don't really know where Sheba was, you know, if this isn't just a made up story. But uh, I do know where Egypt was, and I know where Nubia was. And we're talking way back when, Egypt is still a country, but Nubia isn't, you know. Um, and Egypt, back when it was an empire, was a lot bigger than it is now. But anyway, um, moving on. How happy your people must be. Okay, that doesn't make any sense as to why she would just assume that for no reason, but okay. How happy your officials who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Yeah, I have something to say something about his wisdom later on. Praise be to the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and placed you on the throne of Israel. Because of the Lord's eternal love for Israel, he has made you king to maintain justice and righteousness. Um, okay. That's a bit odd. Moving on. Verse 10. And she gave the king 120 talents of gold, large quantities of spices, and precious stones. Notice they don't say what precious stones, they just say precious stones. Like, you know, okay, I got a bone to pick with this one, you know, because, you know, I mean, they can go into detail about all this shit about the temple, how how big it was. I mean, I don't really consider that it was real. And if it was real, it certainly wasn't as described in the Bible. But anyway, it's like they can they can go into all this detail about how big the temple was and how it was made from this and that and the other. But when it comes to precious stones from the Queen of Sheba, nope, they can't be bothered to go into detail on that. What? Does this make any sense to anybody? Never again were so many spices brought in as those the Queen of Sheba gave to King Solomon. Um, well, considering that the Middle East at one time was the crossroads of the world, I doubt that. Anyway, moving on. Um, verse 11. Hiram's ships brought gold from Ophir, and from there they brought great cargoes of almug wood and precious stones. The king used the almug wood to make supports for the temple of the Lord and for the royal palace, and to make harps and lyres for the musicians. So much almug wood has never been imported or seen since that day. Uh, wait a minute. I thought Hiram gave him cedars from Lebanon. Am I losing my mind here? I mean, maybe I am because this book doesn't make any goddamn sense, but please, somebody tell me if I'm losing my mind here. All right. Uh, verse 13. King Solomon gave the Queen of Sheba all she desired and asked for, besides what he had given her out of his royal bounty. Then she left and returned with her retinue to her own country. You know what? I just gotta say this. It's begging for me to say this. Sounds like some hanky panky was going on. Just saying. Okay, moving on. Verse 14. The weight of the gold that Solomon received yearly was 666 talents. Okay, I just got to say this. This is begging for commentary, okay? 666 talents. Do Christians even read their own book? Because they think 666 is the mark of the beast, which I'll get to that later in Revelation. And I think I have a video on it. But but anyway, anyway, so like why don't they think Solomon is the beast if he's getting 666 talents of gold each year? I'm sorry. I just had to point that out. It was begging for commentary. I'm sorry. I'll 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 go on now. Try not to read too much into this. I'm sorry. This is just oh my god, this is horrible. All right. So let's go back to the beginning of verse 14. The weight of gold that Solomon received yearly, I'm sorry, was 666 talents, not including the revenues from merchants and traders and from all the Arabian kings and the governors of the territories. I'm so, I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry. That's like too funny. That's like hilarious. Some do, but ignore anything that doesn't align with their beliefs. Some only read parts of it, and just believe, and the rest just believe they're priests or pastors. Yeah, fair point, Nevermore. Uh, I'm sorry. This is just hilarious. This is hilarious. Okay, moving on. Verse 16. King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. Um, why? Gold is a soft metal. Why would he make shields out of gold? Doesn't make any sense. But, you know, whoever said rich people were smart, right? Whoever said rich people were smart. But at any rate, I don't think he was as rich as the Bible says. Anyway, King Solomon made 200 large shields of hammered gold. 600 shekels of gold went into each shield. He also made 300 small shields of hammered gold with 3 minas. No idea what a mina is. Of gold in each shield. The king put them in the palace of the forest of Lebanon. Okay, so they're symbolic shields. Still, I mean, come on. You could at least make usable shields. I mean, like if you're like under attack, hey Atlarky. I mean, like if you're under attack, right? You're gonna want your soldiers to have like usable shields. This doesn't make any fucking sense. All right. Um. Then the king made a great throne covered with ivory and overlaid with fine gold. Oh, great. So now we're killing elephants. Because that's the only way you can get ivory, people. Unless you pull out people's teeth. That's another way to get ivory, but they were probably killing elephants. So, great one, Solomon. Verse 19. The throne had 6 steps, and its back had a rounded top. Oh, great. So they're going into detail about this throne, right? But we don't get to know what the precious stones were that the Queen of Sheba gave to Solomon. What about this makes any sense? Verse 19. The throne had 6 steps, and its back had a rounded top. On both sides of the seat were armrests, with a lion standing between each of them. Huh? Okay. On both sides of the seat were armrests with a lion standing beside each of them. Okay, okay. Um, I misread that. Sorry. Uh, verse 20. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either side of each step. Nothing like it had ever been made for any other kingdom. All King Solomon's goblets were gold, and all the household articles of the palace of the forest of Lebanon were pure gold. Like I said, gold is a soft metal. Why the fuck would you have anything made of pure gold? Doesn't make any fucking sense. Okay, nothing was made of silver because silver was considered of little value in Solomon's day. Okay, so silver was considered of little value in Solomon's day, but the temple of the Lord has silver in it. So basically, Solomon's saying, fuck you, God, I'm more important than you are. Well, yeah, Atlarky, I understand that, but wouldn't it make more sense to have usable shields in the palace, where the king lives? That's all I'm saying. Okay. Um, verse 22. The king had a fleet of trading ships at sea along with the ships of Hiram. Once every 3 years, it returned, carrying gold, silver, and ivory, and apes and baboons. Great. So now we're capturing wild creatures. You're a great King Solomon. Very wise, very wise. Bravo, bravo. Verse 23. King Solomon was greater in riches and wisdom than all the other kings of the earth. The whole world sought audience with Solomon to hear the wisdom God had put in his heart. Year after year, everyone who came brought a gift: articles of silver and gold, robes, weapons, and spices, and horses and mules. So, what did they do with the silver? Just throw it away? Because just a few verses upward, it said that silver was of little use in Solomon's day. Okay, Atlarky. Okay, I gotcha. Alrighty, moving on. Solomon accumulated chariots and horses. He had 1,400 chariots and 12,000 horses, which he kept in the chariot cities and also with him in Jerusalem. The king made silver as common in Jerusalem as stones, and cedar as plentiful as sycamore fig trees in the foothills. Solomon's horses were imported from Egypt and from Q. No idea where Q is. That's Kue. The royal merchants purchased them from Q at the current price. They imported a chariot from Egypt for 600 shekels of silver and a horse for 150. They also exported them to all the kings of the Hittites and the Arameans. I'm not quite sure on this point. I'll have to look it up. But I don't think the Hittites were around in Solomon's day because they would have just fucked him up. Okay. Yep, Nevermore. Yep, he was. Which really ought to tell you something about his quote unquote wisdom. But anyway. Also, let's not forget the killing of the elephants and importing apes and baboons. Chapter 11. King Solomon, however, loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughter: Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittites. They were from nations about which the Lord had told the Israelites, "You must not intermarry with them, because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods." Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. Well, yeah, you idiot God. You can't help whom you love. I mean, come on. You're supposed to have created man in your own image. How can you fucking not know this? Verse 3. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. So, this is another reason I doubt Solomon's great wisdom. Who the fuck, with all of this great wisdom, is going to have 700 wives? Yeah, Satan's little helper. And, like I always like to point out, what kind of an intelligent designer would put the swallowing hole next to the breathing hole, or the birth canal next to the poop chute? Does that make any kind of sense whatsoever. Okay. Verse 4. As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord his God, as the heart of David his father had been. Didn't David order a person killed? So how could his heart have been fully turned to the Lord if he ordered a person killed? Ugh. Of course, this is the Bible. I don't know why I expect it to make any sense, but anyway. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians. Um, I think Ashtoreth is another name for Asherah. I'm not really sure, but Asherah is the wife of Yahweh, and you know, the Bible has hidden that. You can find it, you can find hints of it peppered throughout the Tanakh, but you're never going to find Asherah was Yahweh's wife. But anyway, so I mean, Asherah is actually an indigenous goddess, and Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely, as David his father had done. Again, why are we talking about David followed God with his whole heart when he fucking killed a guy? I mean, come on. Of course, God did commit genocide and command genocide, so I mean, you know, why why am I surprised? Well, yeah, Atlarky, but that was later Judaism. Early Judaism was polytheistic, just like everything else in that part of the world at that time. Um, later, Judaism did not become totally monotheistic until the exile into Babylon. So, yeah, you are right. Okay, let's see. Verse 7. On a hill east of Jerusalem, Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable god of Moab, and for Molech, the detestable god of the Ammonites. He did the same for all his foreign wives who burned incense and offered sacrifices to their gods. The Lord became angry with Solomon because his heart had turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. Although he had forbidden Solomon to follow other gods, Solomon did not keep the Lord's command. So the Lord said to Solomon, "Since this is your attitude, and you have not kept my covenant and my decrees, which I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your subordinates. Nevertheless, for the sake of David your father, I will not do it during your lifetime." Does this make any sense? Why? Never mind. I will tear it out of the hand of your son. Yet I will not tear the whole kingdom from him, but I will give him one tribe for the sake of David my servant and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. Yeah, Uh, and God, don't you remember you promised David that David would never cease to have a descendant on the throne of Israel? Yeah, great way to keep your promise, God. Thanks for acknowledging that yeah, if I could talk. Thanks for acknowledging that, Atlarky. Yeah, pretty much, but I mean, seriously, God's got a trigger temper, so, and what else do you want? Alrighty, um, verse 14. Then the Lord raised up against Solomon an adversary, Hadad the Edomite, from the royal line of Edom. Earlier, when David was fighting with Edom, Joab, the commander of the army, who had gone up to bury the dead, had struck down all the men in Edom. Okay, so if Joab struck down all the men of Edom, how is there a man left in Edom? Is this making any sense at all to anyone? Verse 16. Joab and all the Israelites stayed there for 6 months until they had destroyed all the men in Edom. But Hadad, still only a boy, fled to Egypt with some Edomite officials who had served his father. Well, if I was editing the Bible, I would have put that explanation before saying that Joab killed all the Edomites because that just makes God look dumb. And I know God didn't write the book or edit the book because this God doesn't exist. Sorry, Atlarky. But I mean, it just it just makes these people look dumb. All right. Verse 18. They set out from Midian and went to Paran. Then, taking people from Paran with them, they went to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave Hadad a house and land and provided him with food. Pharaoh was so pleased with Hadad that he gave him a sister of his own wife, Queen Tahpenes, in marriage. The sister of Tahpenes bore him a son named Genubath, whom Tahpenes brought up in the royal palace. There, Genubath lived with Pharaoh's own children. While he was in Egypt, Hadad heard that David rested with his ancestors and that Joab, the commander of the army, was also dead. Then Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Let me go, that I may return to my own country." "What have you lacked here, that you want to go back to your own country?" Pharaoh asked. "Nothing," Hadad replied, "but do let me go." And God raised up against Solomon another adversary, Rezin, son of Eliada, who had fled from his master Hadadezer, king of Zobah. When David destroyed Zobah's army, Rezin gathered a band of men around him and became their leader. They went to Damascus, where they settled and took control. Rezin was Israel's adversary as long as Solomon lived, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad. So Rezin ruled in Aram and was hostile toward Israel. Okay, so let me explain what I just read, even though it probably doesn't need explaining. Okay. So basically, Rezin is butthurt. Okay. So it's not like God raised any adversaries toward Solomon because Solomon gave him the finger. Okay. Solomon already had enemies. It wasn't like the Lord gave him any enemies. Okay. Verse 26. Also, Jeroboam, son of Nebat, rebelled against the king. He was one of Solomon's officials, an Ephraimite from Zereda, and his mother was a widow named Zeruiah. Here is the account of how he rebelled against the king. Solomon had built the terraces and had filled in the gap in the wall of the city of David his father. Now Jeroboam was a man of standing, and when Solomon saw how well the young man did his work, he put him in charge of the whole labor force of the tribes of Joseph. About that time, Jeroboam was going out of Jerusalem, and Ahijah, the prophet of Shiloh, met him on the way wearing a new cloak. The two of them were alone in the country, and Ahijah took hold of the new cloak he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. Then he said to Jeroboam, "Take 10 pieces for yourself. For this is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says: See, I am going to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand and give you 10 tribes. But for the sake of my servant David and the city of Jerusalem, which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, he will have one tribe. I will do this because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, Chemosh, the god of the Moabites, and Molech, the God of the Ammonites, and have not walked in obedience to me, nor done what is right in my eyes, nor kept my decrees and laws as David, Solomon's father, did. But I will not take the whole kingdom out of Solomon's hand." I'm not even going to touch that one with a 10-foot pole. "I have made him ruler all the days of his life for the sake of David my servant, whom I chose, and who obeyed my commands and decrees." Yeah, except that time that he got a married woman pregnant, and in order to, you know, cover it up, he had the dude's husband killed. But we're not going to talk about that because David was a hero. Verse 35. "I will take the kingdom from his son's hands and give you 10 tribes. I will give one tribe to his son, so that David my servant may always have a lamp before me in Jerusalem, the city where I chose to put my name. However, as for you, I will take you, and you will rule over all that your heart desires. You will be king over Israel. If you do whatever I command you, and walk in obedience to me, and do what is right in my eyes by obeying my decrees and commands, as David my servant did, I will be with you. I will build you a dynasty as enduring as the one I built for David, and will give Israel to you. I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever." Solomon tried to kill Jeroboam. Oh, so this is the man of peace. A guy who tried to kill another guy just because the guy was trying to, you know, take the kingdom from him. Yeah, that's a guy of peace, all right. But Jeroboam fled to Egypt, to Shishak. Um, in archaeology books, Shishak will be uh, given as Shoshank. Um, it's the same thing. Shoshank is like an Egyptian name, I guess, and Shishak is the Hebrew name. But so if you go to the archaeology books and you read about Shoshank and Shishak are the same person, just so you know, and stayed there until Solomon's death. Verse 41. As for the other events of Solomon's reign, all he did and the wisdom he displayed, well, you know what? He didn't display much wisdom if he disobeyed the Lord, knowing that, you know, God's trigger happy. But anyway, are they not written in the book of the Annals of Solomon? Oh, great. So we don't have those either. Great one, God. Verse 42. Solomon reigned in Jerusalem over all Israel 40 years. Then he rested with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David his father. And Rehoboam his son succeeded him as king. Chapter 12. Rehoboam went to Shechem, for all Israel had gone there to make him king. Why did they go to Shechem to make him king? Why didn't they make him king in Jerusalem? I don't know. Moving on. When Jeroboam son of Nebat heard this, he was still in Egypt, where he had fled from King Solomon. He returned from Egypt. So they sent for Jeroboam, and he and the whole assembly of Israel went to Rehoboam and said to him, Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but now lighten the harsh labor and the heavy yoke he put on us, and we will serve you. Uh, wait a minute, wait a minute. Uh, Solomon couldn't do anything in Egypt because Solomon wasn't Pharaoh in Egypt. Verse 5. Rehoboam answered, Go away for 3 days and then come back to me. So the people went away. Then King Rehoboam consulted the elders who had served his father Solomon during his lifetime. How would you advise me to answer these people? He asked. They replied, If today you will be a servant to these people and serve them and give them a favorable answer, they will always be your servants. But Rehoboam rejected the advice the elders gave him and consulted the young men who had grown up with him and were serving him. He asked them, What is your advice? How should we answer these people who say to me, Lighten the yoke your father put on us? The young men who had grown up with him replied, These people have said to you, Your father put a heavy yoke on us, but make our yoke lighter. Now tell them, My little finger is thicker than my father's waist. My father laid on you a heavy yoke. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. Bad move, Rehoboam. Bad move. Verse 12. 3 days later, Jeroboam and the people returned to Rehoboam as the king had said. Come back to me in 3 days. The king answered the people harshly. Rejecting the advice given him by the elders, he followed the advice of the young men and said, My father made your yoke heavy. I will make it even heavier. My father scourged you with whips. I will scourge you with scorpions. So the king did not listen to the people, for this turn of events was from the Lord, to fulfill the word the Lord had spoken to Jeroboam, son of Nebat, through Ahijah the Shilonite. When all Israel saw that the king refused to listen to them, they answered the king, What share do we have in David? What part in Jesse's son? To your tents, Israel. Look after your own house, David. So basically, they're saying, Fuck you, Rehoboam. You should have taken our advice. So the Israelites went home. But as for the Israelites who were living in the towns of Judah, Rehoboam still ruled over them. King Rehoboam sent out Adoniram, who was in charge of forced labor, but all Israel stoned him to death. King Rehoboam, however, managed to get into his chariot and escape to Jerusalem. So Israel has been in rebellion against the house of David to this day. I'm not even going to say anything to that. When all the Israelites heard that Jeroboam had returned, they sent and called him to the assembly and made him king over all Israel. Only the tribe of Judah remained loyal to the house of David. When Rehoboam arrived in Jerusalem, he mustered all Judah and the tribe of Benjamin, 180,000 able young men, to go to war against Israel and to regain the kingdom for Rehoboam, son of Solomon. Okay, God's got Alzheimer's, like I like to say, like all the fucking time. Because, like, a few sentences ago, it said only Judah remained loyal to Rehoboam. And now it says Judah and Benjamin. What the fuck? Get your fucking story straight. Verse 22, but this word of God came to Shemaiah, the man of God. Say to Rehoboam, son of Solomon, king of Judah, to all Judah and Benjamin, and to the rest of the people, this is what the Lord says. Do not go up to fight against your brothers, the Israelites. Go home, every one of you, for this is my doing. So they obeyed the word of the Lord and went home again, as the Lord had ordered. Then Jeroboam fortified Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. From there he went out and built up Peniel. Jeroboam thought to himself, the kingdom will now likely revert to the house of David if these people go up to offer sacrifices at the temple of the Lord in Jerusalem. They will again give their allegiance to their lord Rehoboam, king of Judah. They will kill me and return to King Rehoboam. After seeking advice, the king made 2 golden calves. He said to the people, it is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Here are your gods, Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. One he set up in Bethel, and the other in Dan. And this thing became a sin. The people came to worship the one at Bethel and went as far as Dan to worship the other. Jeroboam built shrines on high places and appointed priests from all sorts of people, even though they were not Levites. He instituted a festival on the 15th day of the 8th month, like the festival held in Judah, and offered sacrifices on the altar. This he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves he had made, and at Bethel he also installed priests at the high places he had made. On the 15th day of the eighth month, a month of his own choosing, he offered sacrifices on the altar he had built at Bethel. So he instituted the festival for the Israelites and went up to the altar to make offerings. Oh my fucking God. Hey, sir, little wolf. That's it, Atlarky. That's it. But I agree, it was long and boring. But anyway, yeah. So let's see. What have we learned today? We learned that God's got Alzheimer's. I mean, we learn that every Saturday, but come on. What else can you say? We learned that God breaks his promises. And for the sake of argument, I'm granting that this God exists, even though it doesn't. So, yeah. So that's about all we learned today. God's got Alzheimer's and he breaks his promises. Yep, sounds about right. Anyway, I'm gonna go. Uh, but I will say this, I don't know when I'm gonna be on tomorrow. I will have a live stream tomorrow. Um, but um, somebody's coming to clean the house, part of the house at least tomorrow. Okay. And I don't know when they're gonna be leaving, so it might not be at my usual time that I live stream. So just, you know, uh, I will be live streaming though. I just don't know when. So, anyway, please give the video a like, leave a comment for the algorithm. Uh, if you would like to join this channel, you can join for as little as 99 cents a month. I would really appreciate it. It helps keep this channel going and it helps improve this channel. And so, yeah, at any rate, I will see you tomorrow for Atheist Church. Have a great day, everyone, and talk to you later. Bye.